What's up, guys? Here today, walking the discussion. This one's gonna be on DLC in general for season 2, but I'm gonna kind of talk about the DLC from season 1 and how it was actually handled in season 2, which it was barely handled in season 2 at all. So obviously, you know, in 203 episode 3, of course, in Harm's Way, they actually made an appearance, which is kind of surprising. You know, other than that, they didn't really do anything. They had no impact to the story. They were just there for that one moment if you got Tavia to convince them to join the group. So that's pretty much it. You know, we had Vince show up, told on Tavia. You had Russell, he just told Clem to go on. Then we had Wyatt, he just like go on the bill. And then you have Shale just watching, and Becca too. So, and they weren't really used too much. We also saw Eddie in the 204 slide, but he wasn't really in that episode, which is kind of disappointing. I was really looking forward to seeing. And of course, people wanted Nate, but Nate did not show up either, so kind of disappointing. I know it's a bunch of hard work to get these characters into the game, like having them have, you know, all those choices we made in 400 days to transfer into season 2 would be a lot of hard work. So I can get it, but Telltale kind of promised us. They didn't really promise us, but they told us to actually go ahead and go play 400 days before you go play season 2, and it would have an impact, which is kind of what they said. So I'm kind of wondering what made them actually change this purpose, because you can see from episode 3, it was kind of like a little glimpse into, you know, what was going to happen in the future episodes. We saw the character actually come back in episode 3, and they were there, so they had some kind of impact in the future maybe. So I don't know what made Telltale actually rethink that plan. It was a great plan. The DLC had great potential, but it wasn't really used at all. So anyways, you know, it was a great idea for DLC, and if it was actually executed greatly, then it would have been a success, but obviously that wasn't the case. So this DLC was kind of left in vain, and I feel that I'm just hoping for it to have some kind of purpose in season 3. I know it's kind of a long shot because, you know, the characters were on season 1 DLC supposed to be in season 2. Like, what if they actually come into season 3? So that's what I'm gonna get into now. The season 2 DLC. I picked a few that were suggested from other videos or some that I personally have interest in, or what if season 2 doesn't get DLC, or what if, you know, it doesn't really follow Clem's story anymore. So the first DLC is obviously the Kitty Flashback DLC. It's one of the ones that has been suggested forever now. Everyone wants to see how Kitty made it out of Savannah, and that would be pretty interesting. Now the problem I have with these flashback DLCs, they are great for the story, but what does it have to actually have some kind of potential in season 3? What I think is that, you know, Telltale wants to have DLC that can have some kind of impact in season 3. Therefore, you know, just having a little flashback story would just be play it once and then you're done. But if you go back and play a DLC that actually has meaning to it, like, you know, 400 days type DLC, you know, that has potential. But a Kitty Flashback DLC doesn't really have potential choice wise. If you make choices in that DLC, then where would they go? Kitty's obviously determined now, so I don't really see where that would end up being. So next DLC is the Krista, or the Clem and Krista DLC flashback to when they skipped those months. This one's also a good one. We didn't get to see how Clementine actually shaped up throughout that few months of her being with Krista, and how they kept her alive and everything else. Now again, with the Kitty one, it's a flashback DLC. If you make choices in that DLC, how will it affect what happens in season 3? It's obviously flashback, and Krista isn't really around anymore, so maybe, I don't really know. I lost faith in Krista coming back because of, you know, what one of the Telltale writers said in the Playing Dead spoiler cast. He like said something like, oh, sometimes you don't meet back up with a character that you lose. So that's kind of what I think. I don't really know. I lost kind of hope in Krista. So next DLC was one that was suggested too, the Jane with Jamie DLC. Now obviously we got to hear a lot about Jamie, but we don't know how it actually went down and how stuff happened. Now again, you know, Jane is determinate, so How will it affect her if it actually happens? Now, I can see something as if, you know, well, never mind, screw that. I don't really see how these flashback DLCs can actually have some kind of effect in Season 3 if that happens with the choices and everything. Like, the point of Telltale Walking Dead is to have our choices actually mean something, and I feel that that wasn't really justified in Season 2 at all. Therefore, they should actually have some kind of DLC that they can actually, you know, make some great choices and new characters or something like that, and then bring it into Season 3. Therefore, you have some new choices or a new character or new outcome or something like that. So that's what I think. Now, the next DLC is kind of one that I don't know if I really thought of it. I just really I thought about it a little bit. Like, the introduction to new characters. Like, what if Season 3 doesn't really start a new journey as Clementine? Maybe it doesn't really involve Clementine as much, which I'm really not hoping for, but maybe it kind of introduction to some new characters that you actually play as or something like that. Like, let's say you have this dude, his name is, I almost said Doug, his name is Josh. Okay, you play as Josh and he's some kind of survivor or something like that. So I wouldn't really be too fond of this DLC, because if you're gonna start off a new character, like, go ahead and just make a Season 3 already. Just go ahead and skip DLC or something like that. So one that I am more interested in is basically a part 2 to 400 days. Like, maybe I don't know how many days they're in now, but probably like 800 days or 1,000 something days. So I'm not really sure. Like, well, they're probably not 1,000 days into the apocalypse. Probably like how much they are, like probably like 500 to 800 or something like that. I don't really know how many days they're in the apocalypse right now, but maybe you actually go back to, or maybe you actually play as the original 400 Days characters, like, you know, play as Vince, Russell, Wyatt, and Shell. Maybe you play as them again, probably, you know, wherever they are, and therefore, you know, these characters that weren't really too much let out in Season 2 can actually have different outcomes. Therefore, they can actually be back in Season 3, and that's what I think. Now, yeah, I really want to see Vince, Russell, Wyatt, and Shell and Becca, so I'm really hoping for them to actually show back up in Season 3. Therefore, having a DLC like this would actually be more beneficial to the series, having these characters actually show up and have more of an impact in Season 3. Now, other DLCs that were mentioned, like, kind of like an opening to the endings, you know, the Alone ending, the Jane ending, and the Kenny ending. I don't really see these actually being DLC, because basically they already start to the whole seasons. Like, if you were to play as Clementine again for Season 3, just why would you make an opening to the endings with DLC? Save that for the actual season. So I'm really hoping for, mostly, like, out of all these, I'm hoping for a 800 Days DLC, if you were to call it that. But, you know, it's all up to whatever Telltale's doing, whether they have a vision for new characters, or Clementine's story, or the 400 Days cast. So tell me your opinions on everything. Tell me your theories. Tell me what DLC you want, your ideas and everything else. So put them down below, and I'll be sure to read them. And I might just go ahead and do some kind of video that actually spotlights, you know, some DLC choices that you guys actually came up with. So that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'm out.